Welcome to the Dutch Game Day, run by the Dutch Games Association and by Alessandra from Control magazine. Today we have the third talk at this stage by Koen Deetman from KeokeN Interactive. Is that how you pronounce it? KeokeN?
Yeah.
KeokeN?
KeokeN.
KeokeN? Is it that one?
Sort of.
Sort
yeah,
of?
yeah.
Okay, okay. They exist for 10 years now. They started their company in 2013, which is amazing. They're also up for an audio award tonight. They're nominated for this, so that's amazing. Yes, applause for that. So super exciting. You're making space games, lots of them. I remember something about the moon,
Yeah.
and now it's about Mars,
For
right?
a while now.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, warm applause for Koen.
So first of all, thank you all for coming. It's actually a lot of people. Also, Paul and I and the team, yeah, we never really give much talk. So when I was talking about this and I was calling the presentation triple A or double A on a shoestring budget, actually it brought me back to a moment where I was actually visiting the Museum of Flight that's in Seattle in the USA, and I visited the Apollo 11 Expo. And here you see me, that's me next to the Saturn V rocket engines that are actually installed there, and you cannot believe how big these engines are. They are super large. But what struck me is that astronaut suits do not have shoestrings. So this talk immediately feels already on that end. Let's first start with who am I? How this came to be. So my name is Koen Deetman, CEO and game director on at least the past two games. And also do not call out my name Koen in the USA, because that can get you into trouble. So I also internationally call myself Conrad. That's where it derives from. I'm having the company with Paul Deetman. We are both the founders of KeokeN Interactive. He's my brother. He's sitting there. And yeah, we started a long time ago already, because when we were younger, we always made movies. I think the picture on the left is something like Blues Brothers, or I don't know. I remember us making James Bond movies, of course also Star Wars. And the other one is, of course, spaceships. You know, we always try to work with each other and play with each other, and we actually still do that today. So, and there's a picture of actually the latest edition. We have yeah, coming close to an action figure of our game. That's Moonbear. We started at the kitchen table with zero. We had nothing. We had a whiteboard of her sister, and we thought, let's try to make these games. And Forbes thought that was very interesting to write about, calling it a 1.5 million success that is purely based on approximately the budget that we gathered over the years. But let's get quickly back to shoestring budget. What do I mean with that? And when I ask Uncle Google, it says that it is involving a relatively small amount of spending that, for the planned spending. So you're gonna have to, you want to make something out of your game, something, the ambitions are super high, and then you have to figure out what budget makes sense out of that. And if I combine it to games, I was thinking, like, how can I actually explain a little bit how a shoestring budget works? That means, like, our planned spending was maybe more. No, it was more like the results we were after. Or can we do that in a more efficient way? Maybe a more, cheaper way, or at least to be more sensible about the budget. Can we still make that? So I'm going to make a very bold comparison here, and don't burn me on it immediately, but there are some interesting things here. So I'm focusing on single-player narrative games, linear games. And so to speak, we have right now, they're calling it triple indie. Indie companies, double A, and you have triple A. And they're also lately being called quattro A. If you look at how those complete production plans actually go nuts sometimes. What I have to say is that for the player, it doesn't matter. They play a cool game. If they like it, if they don't, then that's how they experience the game. But for the back end, for the production lines, it matters mostly everything. So if we take a comparison directly here, the budget ranges can be a little bit lower or a little bit higher, but approximately between 3 to 5 million. Triple A ranges sometimes to 200 million, 100 million to 200 million games, and I've heard crazier stories. Maybe even doubling that. Production time, 2 to 3 years, something compared to AAA, we're quite disruptive. If we compare that to the 5 to 6 years, and I remember Cory Barlog from God of War even saying that 6 years is really, really a very long time to make one product, maybe too long. But that's the reality in most cases. We have team sizes that ranges, can be a little lower or a little higher, but around 30 to 50 people against 300 to 500 people. So can these different companies or different studios and teams make the same game? Well, let me see. Do we have high fidelity graphics? Yes, we do. Do we have high fidelity audio music? Yeah, I see great examples out in the industry. Indies do that. Engaging gameplay mechanics, yeah, that's amazing. Sometimes I'm even more impressed what indies are doing than how a lot of rehash has been done in the AAA. Top of the line story, yeah, absolutely. And top of the line actors and voices. You will see during this presentation that we did reach a lot of cool actors that you wouldn't immediately expect in our game. 50 to 100 hour game, no. That's something, and that is coming down to scope, we actually fail to do. Usually these AAA games are, you can spend a lot of time in there. So, do we compare? Now, on scope, no, we don't. But is it actually necessary? So, after a little bit of digging, and this is also, it's not the rule, it sometimes is a little different for some AAA games and for indies, but generally, you see that indie games are finished a lot more all the way to the end than AAA games. There are cases in AAA that even less than 10% finishes the total product. So you could argue, was it worth doing all that money, all that teams, was it worth that? Well, on an artistic level, I would say yes, but yeah, on a production and business level, maybe it doesn't make sense too much here and there. So, how did we do that? How did we reach those? We're gonna do that back. I forgot the audio because now it's gonna be exciting. Here we go. First of all, this is our first attempt. Our debut game, Deliver Us the Moon, came out in 2018 for the first time. And this is a little trailer of it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So that was Deliver Us the Moon. Our debut. That was, it looks very slick sometimes, but it was an extreme road, I can tell you. Our budget, in the end, was $1 million to craft this game. And it took us 4 years to release. And that is with ups and downs. So you have to, that budget wasn't that million first, but still, in the end, this is how it went. We had a team of 10 to 20 people, maybe 21 at some point at the highest peak where you produce. And it resulted in a 5-hour game. And a lot of lessons learned, I can tell you. You can also say just a lot of failures, because that's something we're usually not so proud of, but we failed a lot in this game. If it's in the budget, if it's in the production, if it's in actually on every level, staffing, but you also create your company with it. That actually was a 100% budget increase. So I imagined myself back in Sweden where I had our first publisher talk, and I said, we're looking for 400,000 euros, and they gave us 500. That was 100% wrong, because it was 1 million eventually. 120% time increase, that was even worse, because very, very, very originally, it was planned for a 4-month project. Turned out to be realistically a year and a half. Wrong, it was 4 years. There are also some cool things, because we've reached more than 2 million players right now. That ranges from units sold, but also to Game Pass and PlayStation Now players. And that is actually still rising quite fiercely. And what's interesting about those 2 million players is that 53% finished our game. And that was very obvious to me. I know we have some ways that we push players in our product to finish the game, but it was still something impressive. I didn't expect that at all. And of course, very proud that we are award winning. We had some awards for a debut game even the award tonight we've won in, I think it was 2 years ago. So now, how do you move on from this? Here you get the newest trailer, because we recently, yesterday actually, released our 2.0 update on Deliver Us Mars. And this is a little snippet of it.
This is what we're doing it for. I can. I don't want to lose you. Damn it!
So that's Deliver Us Mars, our second installment in the series. And to get some numbers going on this, it costed 3.5 million to make, purely on the KeokeN side, because there are some things the publisher also took care of, so it's a little higher than that. But at our side was this, it took us 2.5 years to complete. That's already a significant increase, more efficiency compared to the other. Team of 25 to 35 people sometimes, maybe ranging to the 40. So there were a lot of new people on the project as well, but still the race is not too heavily. It resulted in a 10-hour game. We can argue it maybe is a little longer sometimes. That really doubled our output in a way. We were very new to performance capture, never done that before. We didn't even plan for face animation in this game, and there are 6 characters that have that. We managed multiple outsource partners, something we also haven't done before. And we only had an 18% budget increase. So that was already a huge change compared to the first game. And also the time increase was relatively okay. I mean, we had 16% time increase on the whole project. That means that production-wise, thanks to our producer here, Gijana, who's also sitting here, was actually on time, on track for a lot of times. We had under 50K players in a month. That was also something new to us, because the first game, when we released it ourselves, we had, I think, around 7,000 in the first 6 months. So that was a change. 64% sometimes finished the entire game all the way to the end. And we're even improving on that in this 2.0 update, because there were some significant drops that we wanted to sharpen in that sense. And of course, again, we are award nominated. Tonight we're also nominated, very proud of that. Pure, like a lot of on audio. So I have to thank Sander and Bas for that, who are sitting there. So how do we do that? Our team, and this is something that actually can be very similar to AAA or indie or something else. But you have a couple of phases, pre-production, you know, this is the dream phase. You want to, here's where you come up with the idea, and this, the production phase, is where the reality hits, where you have to make what you come up with. And then we have, of course, our polish phase. And in the first situation, your core team, in our case 15 FTE, full-time employees, ranging from different experience, we're coming up with that in the beginning. Then we doubled our team with the additional team, another 15, so we're already at 30 here. And also ranging from different experiences. And then at the end, we also use a strike team that consisted mostly out of freelancers. They also know, they are usually very experienced. They jump on and off on projects. Actually, a breathing mechanism the game industry in the big companies also has that I not necessarily like, because these people, they stay the full project. They're kind of your furniture of your company. These people can sometimes stay 6 months to a year, and that's because you can actually offer them some contracts, real contracts. You kind of want to figure out people that you can keep if you want to scale your company or move on to the next project. These people usually 1 to 6 months, occasionally a little longer, but it depends on how it flows, how the polish phase goes. And they jump on and off, usually are very expensive as well. So that's also a thing to consider. This is a very similar thing to productions, I think, around the world, maybe a very scaled down, simple version of it. So moving on, you start with a creative plan. And that creative plan, I have to say, preparation was key, and we still missed out on a lot of opportunities here. But you start off with a lot of DDDs, a lot of design documents. And the first one there, you can see it, I think, right here, the GDD, very known to most people, is the game design document. Cinematic design document, a technical design document, audio, narrative, goes on. Animation plans, level overview, cinematic character sheets, production planning, and here, high-level scope breakdown becomes interesting because we made already a single-player narrative game, and with that, we were able to calculate almost on the minute in the game where work and effort and impact for the player was actually going to be. So what you can see here, for example, in the prologue, you see an impact level is high. And that means that for the player, it was a moment that was high impact. It's the start of the game, so we wanted to make that count. And you see in this phase in the project, the effort for the team was green, low. That means that it results in a quick win, something very interesting, because that is relatively affordable to make, easy to make for the team maybe, and still has high impact. Next to it, you see a major project. What does that mean? It's a high impact for the player and also high effort. So usually a very expensive part of the production process. And once that flips, so when there is a low impact and a high effort, usually that's a caution. That's where we try to stay away from or redesign it in a way that it starts to make sense. Because if it's too much effort, And this goes well for a long time, and at some point you have to also lose this sheet a little bit, because then you're in the polish phase and then different factors are more important. High-level milestone plan: if you work with publishers, you want to get paid, so in a way you have to kind of justify some of these things. Script, shot list, some tests for face animation we've done. Here you see a couple of examples, because we've never done face animation before that. And in the background you see our good old narrative director running around with in his makeshift studio, because that was her attic in the office, and that shot, he shot a lot of scenes there, almost everything. So then you go to the moment that you start to do performance capture, and here in the background you see Elise Chappelle, our lead actress, who was 3D capped. So we wanted, because we bought out her likeness, we wanted to have a carbon copy of her in 3D. It was 2 weeks of shooting, so and Paul and I and the team knew that this is probably, when you're on that recording floor, one of the most expensive minutes ever paid, because that was, if you make a mistake, it's going to cost you dearly, because there's around 20 people running around, these actors have booked in time, and everything was, we were very aware that this is going to be an in and out job. We had 6 actors, ranging from Netflix. Yes, we have Asterion in our game from Baldur's Gate. He was actually our performance director, together with Rainer, people from Resident Evil, and even from Horizon that worked on our game. So definitely don't get scared by those actors. They were extremely nice to work with, and it was fitting for us. We have a very interesting thing here: face, body, and voice in sync. We recorded everything, and back then with Centroid that we worked with, it was kind of new to them. Not only was this cost effective, because you record the face, the body, and the voice at the same time, it also is, in a way, the least lost in translation, because if you have to dub it later, it can maybe cause some dissonance here and there. So that was always also very interesting. And we were very creative with Zero G, and here's where you see we're in indie again, because here's an example of Neil, and in the top left corner you're going to see the game view where Elise is going to float into space, but it was actually just a very simple chair without a backrest that caused this effect. Here you see it. That's where you have to get creative, and they were. So that's very nice. So moving on, also a thing where I think we're kind of disruptive is efficient pipelines. And still, I mean, we did it for the first time as well. It was very hard still to make this work. But it was very cost effective, because about 95% of the work that we created or ordered reached the game. And I know examples out in the industry that if you take 100% being made, just 10% reach the game. So imagine all the work from all the people that is never going to be seen by anyone. We have multiple outsource partners, ranging from localization to face animation to the body mocap to QA, all these things. And you have to manage that while also managing the company and the teams on your own. Particularly face animation and performance capture was interesting, because what we did is we only ordered what we needed. And this was to some annoyance by our partners, literally sometimes up to the frame or minute. So there is these time codes here that show exactly when we had something in view. And maybe one takeaway here is, what was interesting is it usually is about the cleanup. So what you should do, you should always, for a flat fee, order the entire recording, so all the rough material, because in the end, you find out, oh, we need a little bit more image here and there. You can still clean it up yourself, and you actually got it for a relatively okay price. That's what we at least negotiated. And that was very handy, because in the end, you can always like shift around, because this is very error heavy. It could be error heavy. And also our face animators were very used to making bulk, so bigger companies usually take on the whole thing, clean it up, and then they can cherry pick. So we also wanted to win time on the workflow, and what we did is we had to develop for 6 platforms, 2 on PC and PlayStation, Xbox. Also, the older generation, the 8th-gen generation, the Xbox One and PlayStation 4. It resulted in 12 builds, 12 separate builds that dropped 10 times a day. So that's 10 times 12. And that is, we needed to invest in build time, I can tell you. Because some of these builds took like 40 minutes to make. And you want to be more efficient in that. Also, when you download them, it took us half an hour. So we invested in packaging and in network speed, and that resulted in that our builds actually took 15 minutes or around it. And it took me at least 5 minutes to drop them on my PC. And because we built it so much, we can also snatch out some of the issues that were happening. If something happened in the build, we could immediately pinpoint where it was. That got us a lot of speed. We also, in-game bug reporting. So instead of looking at these sheets and Jira maps or Trello boards or Mantis reports, you can also see them in game. So in the 3D world, you can open it up and you can pinpoint where it was going wrong. Very clear for some of the, maybe even level design sometimes used it. That's resulted in 35,000 iterations on our game that crafted 10,000 builds until we had our gold master within those 2.5 years. And that looks something like this. So that's a long list of several builds, and sometimes you have to be clear that you copy the right build so that you're not dropping a PS5 build on your computer. Happened to me a lot. Then we have, of course, release day. And on release day, it doesn't stop there for us. So we are very known in making a lot of marketing material. Of course, our publisher does this as well, but we are very lean on the fact that we can also make stuff ourselves. For example, the first trailer, the teaser trailer, was done by us. Also some of these shots, we can record them ourselves, create a lot of content and trailers, and most important thing, put the team in the spotlight. I mean, they have worked a long time on this, and it's the moment that they can maybe talk a little bit about it, share a little bit about it. And one thing I'm very proud of is that we have Moomer and we have a magazine cover. I mean, it's maybe an old thing. I mean, magazines are gonna be not around for a long time, I think, but it's still very cool to see that happen. And of course, our cuddly bear. So then we come on into the takeaways part. I was thinking, like, what can I tell you guys to take away from this? And I would say, know what you want to do. I know it sounds scary if you have a budget like this on your hands. For example, in the mocap, we never done anything like, or what does it cost? Well, I can tell you, I think we estimate around 100,000, turned out to be 500. So that was extremely different from our expectancy at first. Prepare early on. I'm going to tell you again, prepare even more and challenge your plan. Definitely talk a lot about it. Challenge the heart. Imagine scenarios that it can go wrong. Probably 100 of them won't even ever make reality, but you'll recognize when something goes wrong. Communicate, and that has most of the things in processes like this. And this is an ongoing thing you want to evolve down the line. But with your team, with your publisher, with your outsource, everywhere, it is about communication. And we as Dutch people, I think, usually are being taken as very bold. It helps us with this part because we straight up actually say how it is. And that is not appreciated at all sometimes, but it helps making things clear, especially in production. Be honest. Also when things are not going well. We had multiple times where we negotiated. I remember Guy and I talking with Paul about how the production was not on track here and there in areas in the project. But you have to be honest about it. It is scary, especially if you're getting a lot of money for it and you're spending it. It's the clearest thing to be honest about. It's scary, but it helps you in the end. Make the best of what you have, as you saw. Just, we didn't go on into like cables and stuff and have people float, but we said like, that's the desk chairs. And just make what you have, make everything out of it, and use the experiencing around you. So we had a lot of experienced people also helping us, but most important is play your game. more than anyone else. I can tell you that if you work with partners, with publishers, the best weapon in a way that you want to is know your game. Know your game better than anyone else. And I think I played the game a lot. It's over 1,000 hours, I think. Still like some of the parts, so probably is pretty good. Also, I'm looking up to moments where I'm like, not this part again, but I have to do it. But still, in the end, you will love it. And that was it. Thank you for listening, and you can contact us there.
Thank you. That's great. So much insight. There is time for questions. Does anyone have a question? Okay, I'll start over here. I'm going to throw the microphone to you. So catch it, please.
Yes, thank you. Thanks very much for your presentation. I was wondering, on a production side of things, you talk a lot about planning beforehand and planning everything in detail. But normally, as an indie developer, you get sort of the advice to go the agile way and to figure things out along the way, prototype a lot. How do you balance that with this kind of AA side of indie development?
Yeah, so the early beginnings, it starts with a creative plan. We have the luxury that this game was, of course, a sequel. So we had a lot to build from, and that's the upside. When you do make a new IP, there's a lot more work in front, the prototype, the phase that you grow into this new IP. Still, we have to work a little bit on this in our team, especially because the time frame is rather small. But what we tried is that most mechanics, and you can see them bleed over in some production phases, but for example, the planning is extremely needed when you do a very high risk set on motion capture. You need to be prepared. So yes, I think some things suffered a little bit from planning that because it was also new to us. But that's usually how we kind of juggle around with this.
Okay, thank you.
There was a question over there behind you.
First of all, thank you so much for your talk. It's really inspiring. I was wondering, you mentioned that at first Deliver Us the Moon was supposed to be 4 months, and then it took like 4 years. I can imagine that being kind of discouraging. So do you have maybe a way how you dealt with that to keep your motivation up, also for like the whole team? Because I can imagine that doesn't help.
Well, the good thing is I didn't know this when I thought it's going to be 4 months. It's usually afterwards that I was like, wasn't this meant to be 4 months? Yes, it was. So it's more or less going together with the process of crafting a company around it, working with people that start to work with you, contract, taxes, and all that stuff comes with it. So in a way, I would say in the beginning you're kind of distracted enough that you can think about it. Then again, afterwards you see, because there are these bigger milestones that you reach, for example, signing our first deal for 500,000 euros, I can tell you we went nuts in the elevators. And they said like, yeah, what did you do? Yeah, we saw a little bit of Stockholm. Bullshit, they said, you drank yourself in celebration. Like, yeah, okay, well, yeah, we did that. So it's those milestones and moments you kind of reach, you have to celebrate a little bit to keep that motivation up. And I think that's how you get there eventually. Make smaller goals, not the product in the market. I understand we all want a game out that's doing well, but it's the smaller parts. It's the adventure to that moment that matters most of all.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you for your great talk. You talked about the number of people in different phases of development, but I assume that was for your second game, the Mars. Can you give us some numbers about your first game?
Yes, well, it's definitely less glamorous because we were just figuring out what the right thing was. So let's say you start off pitching that's called a prototype, and that was done, I think, by 5 people in the company. Then we did a Kickstarter. You get a lot of more money. We started to travel, started to order some hardware, get maybe a couple of people into the company, raising it to 10 people, and you start to build up on that. So there's no good answer to this than that was just a messy way of learning and failing how the right thing was. Did we need 21 people? Not sure, probably not, or maybe in Deliver Us Mars we handled that a lot better and more structured, and that was the biggest takeaway for us.
Thanks.
Another question over here.
Beautiful presentation, thank you. You had to use, you had to do outsourcing, for instance, the motion capture with Centroid.
Yeah.
What makes you decide to go with a certain outsource party? What do they need to do, or how do you decide to go with a party?
Yeah, that was purely the experience on the moment we signed the deal. That was priceless to jump those leaps. So if you have, for example, Neil Newbon as a performance director, that just got us a lot of experience on the floor immediately and not making even more expensive mistakes. The fact that we chose Centroid was purely on, how you build a relationship, or if you figure out, hey, what do they work on? Is this something also feasible? They were in the UK. We had a publisher in the UK, and that's all the factors that we base it on. If you ask me right now, there's a lot more things we can do ourselves. So we would approach it differently. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
I saw another question in the back over there.
Maybe in 2 steps.
Hi there. My name is Ruben. I have a very specific question. We're 2 voice actors here. I was looking at how you approached the whole performance capture part that was new to you, but also that is an area that is highly developing. I was glad you were saying that you were looking for highly skilled actors with a lot of experience. Is that something that also changes, that you're going more towards AI and using less people? I mean, you were very specific about we need those kind of shots within the game to be cost effective.
Yeah. I think we were looking for a certain emotional craft for this game. And in the beginning, we do that with a certain budget that is planned. And with Deliver Us Mars, it happened that we were able to raise the budget for performance capture. So what we did was we actually had a budget for a lead actress that was where it was allocated for. But instead, we chose to not fully spend it on one actor, because we thought if you have several actors that are pretty good, but maybe not, we're not asking Brad Pitt, for example, we knew it might raise the entire cast a little bit, so we had more value for our money. And for the question for AI, I mean, yeah, I heard some, you can completely replicate someone's voice, but then you're eventually going to start off with something of a legal case with them. Of course, you can also hire them through an AI now, maybe, if you put that in your, as a voice actor, in your, you can put the AI voice of me in your game and you sign a contract on that. I think it will weave into each other. So moments where you think like, this is something we can actually do rather effectively. So the actors we're already working with, but these areas in the game need some more voice, you can maybe resort to it. But if you actually want to try and bring a human emotion over, I think you still have the bigger parts of your project that you have to record and do with the person themselves.
Very happy with that answer.
There is time for one more question. There, to your side.
You said 95% of... how did you do that? Is there a certain way of prototyping or just a really good planner?
So first of all, we ordered just the things we needed, for example. That was a big, in the cinematic level, there were also stuff that was recorded that wasn't paid for, we didn't necessarily need cleaned up. So, And then I think through planning the levels and the linear storyline, we were able to just pinpoint issues coming up. We did make some mistakes. Some levels completely flipped. I remember that Brian, who's sitting there, had a beautiful level called Odom that was not planned to be this nice. It was actually meant for earlier in the game at a level, and you actually hit those issues. So, but because you kind of planned this 2 years before, you were able to pinpoint these issues early on. So that's where we stayed closer to less waste, and we tested a lot. And all those build times improved that, so we were also able to catch issues rather fast.
Great, thank you.
Did you also have a question, a short question? Okay.
Well, from answering an earlier question, you mentioned about how you had a team of 5 who did prototyping, and I just really want to ask how the process in there went. How you earlier mentioned how the pre-production, production, release went, and how that earlier phase of coming up with the idea for deliver us Mars and make that prototype to prove it was a feasible project to chase after.
So you're asking, how do you do that? These phases with 5 people?
More so, how do you do the concept phase and end with something that you're willing to continue further and continue as a full project?
Well, that doesn't involve too much of project planning. It's also the place where you don't really chase an end result. There can be 9 things we're going to make up with a couple of people in the team that are not going to make it, and one of them was pretty cool. And that's a different mindset from finishing a game. We really just start talking with each other, bring some ideas. Sometimes it's the narrative, sometimes it's a little bit of concept art or an idea to improve one of the mechanics. And that happens very early on, and usually with us happens even before deal making. So before we had any deal on this game, we were already quite aware what we wanted to make for this. Helps you a lot in pitching as well. And the luxury that it was a sequel. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for your attention. We'll go into a break now and we'll be back here at 1:30 to talk by Ramon about tiny tools. And at the other stage, Simon Ashby will give a talk. So thank you, enjoy today.
Thank you for coming.